everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Mills Knows Bills podcast. I'm your host, Mills Bender, and with us today we have the illustrious and luxurious Jim Roman, who is a business coach as well as speaker and author. And we've had a lot of conversations over the last few weeks since we've met, just talking about how we both help the same demographic, really, but where you start and stop is where I stop and start, vice versa, and all that. So it's really a nice, beautiful synergy that we have. And so that's really what I want to talk with you all today about, because you're very familiar with the Master Your Money program, but what you don't see is on the back end where my clients still struggle. And so that's why Jim and I are connecting, and he's going to help bridge that gap of struggle. So Jim, is there anything that you would like to say before we kickstart?
Well, I really like what you said. I'm excited because, one of the things that gets me, I say this to you every time we talk, is that you help people figure out their numbers, know their numbers, and I help them hit their numbers.
Exactly.
And that partnership, that strategic partner, is really exciting because, a lot of times my clients don't know their numbers, and so how do I help them hit them? So, like I said, every time, I just love that. I
love it. So why don't we kind of just walk through then the step-by-step of kind of where I start, you pick up, and then I pick up again.
Okay.
Just as we've been talking. So, you and I both agree that money mindset is important.
100%.
And I think money mindset is important because you got to figure out how you're getting in your own way, how your previous money stories are still coming up today, as well as it allows me to tailor the conversation with my clients a little bit more. But from your perspective, specifically a sales and revenue perspective, why is mindset so critical?
Well, I think, we'll go back to the personal side of it. I think a lot of times people don't want to know their numbers because they're afraid of their numbers. I remember me many, many years ago, there was 3 years I did not do my taxes, right? So the first year I didn't do it because the IRS owed me, so no need to do it. The second year, I didn't want to do my taxes. And the third year, I realized if I didn't do my taxes, I was in trouble. And so I reached out to a friend of mine who's a CPA, and I said, can you help me get my taxes done, as it's really weighing on me? And we did the taxes. She tiles them up and says, you owe X amount of dollars. And I went, woohoo! And she goes, no one's ever been this excited to owe the IRS. I'm like, that means that if I owe money, that I made money. Now, I had no money, but it was like, oh my God, I was avoiding knowing my numbers.
Yeah.
And I think that mindset's super important, that numbers help you. I always say, not knowing your numbers is like playing golf without keeping score. You might be having fun, but you don't know how you're doing.
Yeah. I also feel like a lot of people think that their financial situation and where their business is at is always worse in their head.
Oh yeah.
Until you actually sit down, it lets you know how you're actually doing on the personal side and the business side. I mean, I myself get in my own head sometimes, which is why I look at my numbers.
Right, yeah. Well, I think a lot of times people, this is a huge one, which they look at their numbers, whether it's personal or professional, but in business, they're like, it's their worth. Like, if I'm not making money, then I'm a failure. No, you're just not making money. I mean, I remember having a conversation years ago with a client, like, no, that just means you haven't figured it out yet.
Yeah.
You have a coach, we'll help you figure it out. So the mindset comes back to that numbers is a tool.
Yes.
Just like I did a blog not too long ago on knowing your numbers for health. You know your cholesterol level, your LDH, all those numbers in your health, but do you know the health numbers in your business?
Yeah.
And people don't.
No, they really don't. They often don't know where to start, which is then why I go from money mindset to their personal budget. And as you and I know, a lot of people hate the B word out there, but as the followers and listeners know, a budget is just a monetary reflection of your priorities. Yeah. And so in order to start knowing your numbers and creating that game plan, you need to look at the personal side first. Insurance, saving, investing, debt payoff, mandatory expenses, the whole picture on the personal side. And then you embed what you want to pay yourself after tax, right? You work backwards, you figure out that after tax dollar amount, you take that and put it in your business budget. Then with your business budget is where you add on those taxes, as well as all of those other business expenses, saving, investing, debt, yada, yada. And you work backwards to this one dollar amount, this one revenue amount that you're trying to achieve each month. And so for my clients, maybe they're earning $10,000 a month, but once we've worked backwards, we figured out that they really want to be at $15,000 a month. And so this is where my clients struggle because I'm not a sales coach. I can give some ideas, as you and I have talked about. If you need to get $15,000, that means you need to close X number of clients, which means you need to talk to Y number at an average closing ratio of 10%. But it all sounds great, but they often struggle with bridging that gap. I'd say 95% of my clients struggle with bridging that gap. So how do you come in and be the solution for that jump?
Sure. So one of the things is that we do similar to you is we want to know their numbers. So
Sure.
in our programs, one of the things we ask them is what do they need, want, and desire to make,
Mm-hmm.
right? Knowing that they don't know any of those, I figured, well, let me give them 3. Maybe they'll get 1 for me. And so the first thing we ask them, one of their homework assignments is go back, figure out what your expenses come to. An interesting thing, people always say, oh, my expenses come to $3,000 or $5,000. I'm like, why is it that 9 times out of 10 they say 3 or 5? Because my bills come to $4,672.15. Mm-hmm. Yours is 3. Oh yeah, I rounded up. I'm like, oh, I wish I could round up.
Yeah.
So again, going back to where you come in, which is awesome, is going to know the need, want, and desires, because now we're working with real numbers.
Yes.
So then our goal is to show them how to hit that number. So we figure out their revenue goal. If it's $15,000, we find out their average sale. Most people don't know their average sale. So their homework assignment typically is go back, look at your last 10 sales, divide it by 10, and you'll get your average number. Now, you probably won't like your average number, but it's the beginning of that average number. And say their average number is 3,000. Where our goal is to make that average maybe 4,000 or 5,000. So again, going back to what they need to make is where you come in. Then the revenue they need to make where I come in. And then we start to figure that out by, again, doing the numbers. I find that most people in business, the way they look at it is I'm just going to work hard and hopefully at the end of the month, I hit my numbers. I found that just figuring out what that number of appointments they need. The thing we want to know is the number of appointments they need to hit based on their closing ratio and average sale to hit their sales goal. Yeah. Once they figure it out, it's like, I only have to do 3 a week? That's all? And all of a sudden it was the aha moment. It's like,
yes.
Would you think? I thought it was more than that. And well, you didn't track. So when we figure out the number, then we hold them accountable and support them in hitting that number.
I always find that, because you hit upon this, working hard. Let me just work harder. But if you're not working smart and hard, you're being busy for the sake of being busy.
Yep.
You're not being productive. And just because you're spending your time all day working doesn't mean you're being efficient. Right? And so I love how you hone in and tailor on where they need to be efficient, because as business owners, a lot of us are visionaries. We get distracted by shiny things and, oh my gosh, squirrel, and it's awesome. But you kind of take that and focus and hone in onto what they exactly need to check. And once you know what you need to achieve, I find it's a lot easier to get there.
Yes.
It really is.
I think a lot of times we fool ourselves. So go back to the number. I could tell you story after story. So we developed a program, the 90-day fast track. In 90 days, we teach you and show you how to double your business within 3 to 6 to 12 months. And so the first week, we're talking about knowing your numbers, needs, wants, and desires to determine, based on their closing ratio, how many appointments they need on a monthly basis, a weekly basis. And so we figure out, say you need 3 appointments a week, prospect appointments, to hit your number. And I always draw up on the board. So if you need 3 a week to hit your number, and you have 1 appointment this week, 1 appointment next week, 3 appointments a week after that, and 0, will you hit your number? And they'll go, well, it depends. Like that one deal, if I close it, it'll make my numbers for the year. But what if you get 0, 0, 0, 0, 0? So we start to fool ourselves that, well, no, it's 3. And I hold you accountable to 3. And we always joke in our 90-day program that by the 8th week is when we start getting the results. And we studied why was it the 8th week, and one of my coaches and I were talking about that. We said, oh, they ran out of excuses, right? So they're going, I'm just going to tell the coach he used that excuse last week. I can't. What? No, that person used that. Like they really run out of excuses. So by the 8th week, they realize I'm the problem. Yeah. And then they're coming back in the 8th week going, okay, I need 3 appointments. What do I need to do differently? And then finally, it's no longer a game. It's no longer messing with their mind. They know legitimately if I'm going to hit the number I need or want, 3 is the number, and then we coach them how to do that.
I think that's a perfect point to kind of segue our conversation, because you and I both identify how many appointments they would need to get. Yours is a whole lot more robust because it's your zone of genius. But I find that, where my clients and my people struggle is they see the number, they agree with it, they say, wow, yeah, that's great, that seems to be attainable, but then they can't actually fill their book with those appointments. How do you help them do that?
Sure, there's a couple of ways of doing that. Number one is they're developing their unique value proposition, their marketing message. So often I find in, say, Mary Kay, for example, over the years in coaching that industry, it's like, well, anybody with skin. And I said, well, so if I don't care about my skin, is that a good referral? Well, no, obviously. If I'm homeless, is that a good referral? Well, no. Well, then it's not anybody with skin. It's someone who wants to, feel more empowered, feel more confident. I've done a lot of times I tell Mary Kay people that Miss Kay, who started Mary Kay, did it to help women feel more confident and competent in their careers. And it really isn't a makeup company, it's a women development company. They go, how did you know that? I'm like, I did my homework. Yeah. But they don't lead with that. They lead with makeup and stuff like that. And so first is their marketing message, we call their unique value. What makes them different than anybody else? Because that's what's going to attract the kind of prospect that you want. Sure. And within that UVP is, well, who's your target market? Who do you enjoy working with? How do you make money working with that person, etc. And then it just comes down to getting you in front of more people. And that's our secret sauce. I think that's because of my 20 years of marketing experience. I find that most people have 3 ways of bringing in business. 1, hoping, praying, and begging it comes in. And that's just not enough. I mean, I pray myself, but just not enough. There's more you got to do to get your numbers.
We're going to take a little sidebar. There's a CPA that I used to know. You go like this, right? Put one hand up, put the other hand up. Don't let this be your only tax strategy.
I love it.
Don't let this be your sales strategy.
Yeah. Well, where that came from is, so in the 90-day program, always trying to figure out how to get results. I want to get people results. In fact, we got to a point where 65% of the participants would actually double their business within 6 to 12 months.
Wow.
Now, it took a while to crack the code, but one of the codes was that in the 7th week, in the 7th session, we would say, what do you do to bring in business? And that's where people go, website, word of mouth, and hoping. And I was like, well, if you're not spending money towards your website, then really it's not a strategy.
Yeah.
And word of mouth is not automatic. You have to work that.
Right.
I realized, they don't have enough strategies.
Right.
That fit their personality. Because if I'm an extrovert, I would do these strategies. If I'm an introvert, I do these strategies. So we took that 7th session and put it to the 4th session. And started to figure that out.
Smart. So I'm not going to ask you to spill all of your secrets, but can you maybe provide us with 2 extra ways that people can bring in business besides, the more common ones? Sure.
So I could do that generally or specifically. So let's say I'm in property management. So property managers, a lot of the people in the property management industry, they fell into it. And they always joke, no one goes to college and say, I can't wait to be a property manager. They fall into it, right? And so they have a friend who has a property that gives it, they have a property that they're managing, they get it. But historically, you get a lot of your business in property management from your current investors, right? And most people aren't tapping into that. The second way is realtors. Most of them built the second level of their business through realtors, but they got caught up doing the work. They forgot to build the relationship outside the work. And then eventually networking would be a third way. So ultimately, to bring in more business, it could be marketing, it could be networking, it could be referrals. If I was in real estate, I remember a guy in real estate, perfect example. His number one strategy, other than hoping, praying, and begging, was open houses. And I said, well, David, how's that going for you? He goes, I hate open houses. I hate it. So I said, how long is David going to do open houses before he gives up?
That long?
No. And so I said, David, we need to come up with a different way, another way to bring in more business. Don't stop doing open houses until we find another replacement for that. Because right now you're getting 1 house a month.
Yeah.
How do we get you another house a month or 2 houses a month? And so we built a referral-based business around creating a network. And that's another way for him. So once we figure out how to build his network, he could stop doing open houses, only do them from time to time.
Yeah, I love that. So it sounds like you're really tailoring the strategy then to the business owner and the industry.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been working with hundreds of industries over the last 18 years, and I found that in real estate, I go back to that example. So often realtors are told, do it the way I did it as your broker. Do it the way I did it. Well, I'm not you.
Yeah.
And they would and the sales manager will do it the way I did it. Do it the way, but I'm not you. And so I realized that was the number one strategy they were told. So I started creating 8 to 10 to 12 strategies for each industry. And then I presented and said, here's 8 to 10 ways of bringing a business for a chiropractor or a web developer or any industry, and say, which ones are you most likely to be comfortable implementing? So of those 8 to 10, I want to find 3 that they actually apply.
So you're not trying to implement all of them?
No.
Okay. I was going to, because that's my next question. How does someone not get overwhelmed with all 8 to 10 when they already wear 12 different hats being a business owner?
Yeah.
So do you find that the 3 are able to be consistently implemented without being overwhelming?
Yes, 2 to 3 are very easy. The reason why I picked 10, because if I pick 3 and you only do one may not be enough because it may be seasonal. The economy might affect that. So I taught my clients to identify 8 to 10, find 3 that work. So if one of them stops working, you can just pull from the other 7 and not have to skip a beat. Whereas if you only have 3 and one stops, you're like, what do I do? I'm freaking out. And you don't think clearly when you're freaking out. And so I thought, let's give them 8 to 10. That worked. And then I said, which one are you most likely to be comfortable implementing? They go, well, this one and this one. I go, what about this one? Well, tell me more about that. And then I go, and they go, okay. So 2 to 3 to 4 usually gets them to their number.
I like that. I love how you're not just giving the theoretical approach. You're also showing the how, which so many business owners need. Not because they need to be spoon-fed, but because their brain is so preoccupied with all other aspects of their business, they need that expert to guide them and give them that help. So once someone starts consistently implementing those 3 strategies, you said it normally takes 6 to 12 months to see double the business?
Well, it depends on the industry. If you're doing 0 and getting to 1, that's overnight.
Right.
So each person's different based on how quickly they implement. One of the things we think is implement now, perfect as you go along.
I love that.
Right, versus perfect someday. And so I say the sooner you act, the sooner you get the result. I say what you do today doesn't pay off till tomorrow. What you do this month doesn't pay off till next month. The sooner you implement these ideas to learn, the sooner you're going to get the results. So depending on that individual, how quickly they're going to apply that principle.
I once had someone in my network tell me the revenue you have today is a result of the work you started 6 months ago, and the lack of revenue you have today is the result of the work you did not do 6 weeks ago.
Yes.
Which is crazy.
Well, it's interesting because we figured that out as well. So I remember one of the persons is like, May is so slow. I said, what were you doing in April? Oh, we were really busy. I said, did you market in April? Well, no, I didn't have time to market in April. You think not marketing April affected May? They're like, Maybe. That was the number 1. Maybe. I'm like, And so historically, we check in with that. When anybody says this month is slow, I always ask what was, and 99% of the time, the previous month was slow, or it was busy. Yeah. I always say it's the best time to market is when you're busy. I'm like, what? Because your competitors are just as busy and they stop marketing, and that's your opportunity to win market share.
All right, that's it. Mic drop. We're gonna. That's awesome.
It is. It is an amazing thing. But I remember talking to the radio person that's what they're encouraging people to do is that your competitors stop marketing, and here's your opportunity to take market share.
Brilliant.
So when I now know when I get busy, I don't go, oh my God, I'm busy. I'm like, oh, what can I do to maintain this momentum in the months to come? Because I have the same. I'm no different than anybody else. I have all my months mapped out as to which one are my busiest and when are my slowest. And the ones that are slowest are typically because previous busiest. And so we put in marketing plans previous to that are automated in some extent so that we don't have to worry about that month being as slow from the previous year.
I love it. So really, if those who are listening have not picked up on it yet, I help identify the numbers. You help hit those numbers. So that way someone can kind of, they sandwich you, right?
Yeah.
Know the numbers, hit the numbers, implement the plan from step 1. So that way you can be on track for retirement. You can make sure that you're investing back into your business. You have time to spend, you have the ability to spend time with your family and kids and all of that, which you say, you have a really good subheading where you talk about live life and
how to make more money.
Have
more time, but more importantly, have a life beyond the business.
I love that. Say that one more time.
We help our clients to help make more money, have more time, but more importantly, have a life beyond the business.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I want to add something though, something that you triggered for me.
oh,
Going back to mindset. You know, one of the reasons one hits one's numbers is because they have a reason why to do that. Mm-hmm. So it goes back to the mindset you asked, initial question. Mm-hmm. Whereas it's one thing to double your numbers, it's one thing to hit your numbers. But one of the things I ask in the very beginning of working with someone is, if I were able to hit your revenue goals, what are you going to do to celebrate? Right? Because usually it's about the money, but it should be about the money and what it can do for you. Yep. I remember one of my participants said to me, Jim, I miss your fast track. I'm like, why? He goes, well, that was the only time I was actually hitting my numbers. And I told you that if I doubled my number, I bought myself a Jeep. And I bought myself a Jeep, and it was my best year ever. I want to buy another vehicle. Can you do your fast track again? Because I really want to do that. I'm like, I sort of didn't get it at the time, but I reflected years later. I'm going, oh my gosh, because he had a why, a mindset of, if I do this, I get to do this. Mm-hmm. You're more likely to hit your numbers as well as, and that goes back to what you do, is knowing your numbers for the future, your retirement, your travel, your lifestyle, your way you want to live life. Absolutely. And if you have that, you're more likely to make the right choices financially as well as from a business perspective.
It's important to make sure that not all money is going towards the future, though.
Yes.
You need to celebrate the now. You know, I don't know if you remember how you celebrated your first big win in your business.
I do.
Okay. Share yours, and then I'll share mine.
Sure. Oh, this is great. I haven't shared this in a while. So this is funny. So my first success is I wanted to hit a certain amount of revenue, and when I did, I was going to celebrate. And I remember driving home on that very day and going, "Oh my God, I hit my number! I am super stoked. I'm going to go celebrate." And I'm going to go to Bonefish Grill.
Yes.
I'm going to get myself some bang bang shrimp.
Yes.
And a cocktail.
I love it.
And some ahi tuna. I'm like, cool, I'm going to go do that. And as I'm driving, I'm going, yeah, I can make the bang bang shrimp at home, and I can make my own I can save myself X amount of dollars. I'm like, shut up. Go celebrate.
Go to Bonefish.
Turn around. Let's go. And I remember to this day, I got to the corner bar where I usually sit, and I said, order bang bang shrimp. I take this cocktail and ahi tuna right after that. And that was the best meal I ever had. It cost me, $45? I don't know. I made a lot of money that month. So it was like, seriously, I think it cost me $42 for that meal. And I'm like, you are going to give up $42 where you made, And I realized, wow, we don't celebrate as much as we should.
We don't.
We put it off, and I'm like, so that was my first celebration.
I love it. My first celebration for my business was when I made my first sale.
Okay.
Because when I first started Mills Knows Bills, I wasn't intending to make it my full-time business, or even really a business for that matter, for a while. I was like, 5 years. Okay. And so when I lost my day job in COVID, really MKB was my only backup plan. So then at that point I was like, all right, so pivot from YouTube to figuring out how to sell this thing. And so it wasn't until maybe a few months after I started the business that I made my first sale. And the way I celebrated, I left the other job that I had ended up finding a few weeks after COVID began. I walked across the street to this boba place in South Miami. I got myself a boba tea, and I sat outside, and I just let the sun just wash over me, and that was the best boba tea I ever had. I think I even was like, I'm getting a large. It was like $8, but it was something that I too was like, but I really don't need it. Yeah. It's just boba. But I remember that boba to this day.
Well, it's interesting. So one of our programs, our 90-day program, we do this. We go around and say, if you were to double your number, what would you do to celebrate? And we go around, and this one gentleman said, well, you can't double my number. I said, you're probably right. But if we did double your number, what would you do? He goes, yeah, you can't double a number. Well, just amuse me and say, if you did, he goes, I would buy a banjo.
A banjo?
A banjo. I said, oh, okay, great. And do you know what kind of banjo? Yep, I know exactly what kind of banjo I would buy. I was like, okay, great. But you can't double my number. I'm like, no, no problem. So we wrote that down. We went our merry way. Weeks later, maybe a month and a half later, one of my coaches come back and says, guess what? What? Jim, you remember Jim? I'm like, yeah, he doubled his number. I'm like, oh, he did? Huh? Jim that thought we couldn't double his number? Yeah. Oh, great. Can I run the class next week? And she goes, yeah. I'm like, great. So I come into the class. Good to see everyone. Glad I'm back. Want to go around, see how people are doing. Maybe if anybody doubled their number. And we get over to Jim and said, hey, Jim, how's it going? He goes, yep, I doubled my number. Now, I wanted to say, huh? I said, okay, great. So you're going to buy the banjo? He goes, oh, no, I can't.
Why?
But you doubled your number. Well, it gets better. I said, oh, but you double your number? Because, yeah, I can't. I said, Jim, let me look at you right now and say, it's not an option. I'm your coach. You're going to buy the banjo. And I just stared at him. He looked at me, he goes, Jim serious. I'm serious. He bought the banjo. I see him at a coffee shop months later, and you see his face, and I'm like, hey, how's the banjo? He's like, oh, I love it.
Oh,
and he almost didn't do that.
I know.
Because I really still didn't say to him to this day, you didn't think you could, we got you there. But I didn't. I bit my tongue because that's not powerful enough. But yeah, so I'd say, like you said, celebrate the wins. I try to celebrate every 90 days no matter what. I used to take time for myself every 90 days no matter what.
I love that. I feel like it's so easy for us to, as business owners, think that we're not doing good enough. Kind of like if you're not looking at your numbers, it's worse in your head.
Yes, 100%, yeah.
If you're not taking time to celebrate, you're not taking the opportunity to step back and see everything that you've built and you've created. And so, with that said, if someone is struggling to hit their sales numbers, or maybe they would like to double their sales numbers, maybe they're struggling with just making ends meet, they've maybe worked with me or not, how can they reach out to you to see how they can work with you?
Sure, they can go to my website at jimromanonline.com. There's some free resources there. You can contact me via that. You can see the products and service that we have. Mm-hmm. You can Google me. Most of my social media is jimromanonline.com. Or if you just want to follow me, because I tend to roam around.
Oh my god.
So hashtag roaming around is what I usually do if you need to find me for fun.
I love it. Thank you so much for coming on here and sharing your expertise this morning. I really appreciate it.
Well, it's my pleasure. Again, like I said, I love that you help people figure out the numbers. I help them hit the numbers. But more importantly is to really enjoy the fruits of our labors, personally and professionally. And that's what we're about. Mm-hmm. Is that why are we on this planet? To hopefully live a better life, and that's what we do for people. And so it was an honor to be here, so thank you for having me.
Thank you. And thank you guys for listening or watching this if you're on podcast or YouTube. I appreciate you taking the time. Don't forget to reach out or at least follow Jim Roman at Jim Roman Online, wherever you like your social media. We'll see y'all next time.